New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins, just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag, the one you stole from your ex, or your overpriced half a studio apartment, or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar. Triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a Vitamin Water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
You are tuned in to the FowlWeather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
Welcome, my friends across duck country. It is duck season somewhere, and today we have Mr. Duck Season Somewhere himself. Ramsey Russell joins the FowlWeather Podcast. And I tell you this, what I appreciate the most about inviting our good friend Ramsey onto this podcast was this. I text Ramsey an invite, and his response, yes, in capital letters, would be glad and proud to join you for a conversation. That's the FowlWeather Podcast way. Appreciating your fellow duck hunter and being part of it all. In my opinion, nothing else matters more than keeping duck country strong, keeping duck strong, keeping duck hunting strong, keeping duck conservation is the center of it all, clean water, and our conservation ethics strong. It's all about being strong, standing up for the ducks and duck habitat, keeping quality conservation among duck people across duck country strong. I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but keeping the quality conversation among duck people across duck country strong is really what it is. And without people like Ramsey, the culture of duck hunting, it would die. This man is ducks all day, every day, and he brings duck people into the fold of duck hunting culture each and every time he speaks. I said it to him when I invited him. I think he's a legend in the making in the podcast world. Appreciate you being here, Ramsey. Welcome to the FowlWeather Podcast.
Mike, thanks a lot. I really, truly am proud to be here. You know, you've been on my podcast several times. Always happy to have proud, intelligent, smart people like yourself. And man, I'm just glad for a dang old duck hunter to be on a highfalutin podcast like this.
Come on, man. We're all the same. I consider this a crossover episode. Again, because, you know, I don't know, 3 times maybe I've been on yours for kind of season forecast stuff maybe. But this is the first time I've had the cojones to invite you as a guest here. So I'm definitely humbled. We've had a ton of great conversations. And, you know, I hope this platform gives you the opportunity to kind of flex your duck hunting, you know, knowledge and opinions more so than when you have guests on, right? I appreciate that. When you've got guests, you kind of got to roll with the punches of the guest, right? But I want you to bleed out as much information as you want kind of over these wavelengths with us, Ramsey. So
good. Thank you very much.
So we've noticed that I use the term duck culture or the culture of duck hunting a lot and not the sport of duck hunting. And this is a very strong opinion of my own, right? And I think that the culture of duck hunting and the sport of duck hunting have completely different meanings, but we're kind of going to get into the culture of duck hunting later in this episode and maybe some observations on your end, Ramsey, about how the duck hunting culture has changed. But first, you know, we have some common ground. We spent time at Mississippi State, both of us. So give me a breakdown of, you know, Ramsey, your career as a biologist and duck hunter. Most of our listeners are probably familiar with you. You're one of the biggest podcasts out there in the duck world. But some, you know, might not be so familiar. So give me a little rundown, the cliff notes, you know, Ramsey and who you are and what your career's been and what you've been up to.
I'll keep it short, but I did go to Mississippi State University. It was the best days of my life. Got a master's degree and an undergraduate. Got an undergraduate in wildlife, which at the time was a forestry option. So you got your forestry degree in wildlife. And took some extra classes and stuff like that. And I just really, truly can't imagine having done anything else. That was the only thing that interested me. And but Mike, man, it was a struggle for a guy like me. I went to a very small high school. I did not take advantage of the opportunities given to me. I was ADD, and I graduated still doing adding and subtracting with fingers. You know what I'm saying? It really, but and having to go to college, forestry and wildlife are technical degrees, lots of biology, lots of science, lots of math, lots of everything depending on math beyond adding and subtracting. And I really had to start from scratch and dig deep to get through that curriculum. And really and truly, I did mediocre in those parts of it. It always seemed to come back to the written and verbal communications that put me ahead of my class. That's where, but even then I didn't appreciate that. When I left I went to Mississippi State thinking I wanted to be a deer biologist, work for the state or work for private lands and be a deer biologist. I was a whitetail deer hunter, and I took a trip down to Texas, co-oping on whitetail deer ranch. It was two of the best semesters of my entire life. Was working on that massive ranch in South Texas, low fence, back in the good old days. And shooting antlerless deer and doing that kind of work was work. It was a job description. Oh, we planted and we did fence posts and fixed windmills and did all kinds of stuff, but keeping the antlerless deer at bay was a job description and became kind of like work. I ain't gonna lie to you, it was like real work, WORK work. But man, every time we dropped a disc, the doves come flocking. There were bobwhite quail all over that ranch. And from about mid-November on, every time the wind blew from the north, all the stock tanks on a 107,000 acre ranch, and we're talking little stock tanks and dugouts hidden in the brush country of South Texas. Nobody duck hunted, nobody cared about it. And it just kind of connected me to wing shooting again in a way that I had forgotten since my childhood. And that's kind of where it started. Now, when I got out of my undergraduate, I wanted to be a biologist. I wanted to go to grad school in wildlife management. And really specifically what I wanted to do, what I decided I wanted to do is I wanted to study wildlife response. And I didn't care if it was spotted owls or herpetofauna or quail or any game animal. I wanted to look at wildlife response to different silvicultural systems, clear cut versus shelterwood versus thinning versus this versus that, pine, hardwood. And I struck out left and right. My GPA wouldn't let me do it. And I landed a job though. It's funny when you come to a fork in the road, you take it. And so much through my life, and this being a very, very, one of the beginning parts, I could really look back and take notes. It's like I was on a path, a divine path the Lord had put me on. I wanted to leave Mississippi. I wanted to go out west. I wanted to work in this wildlife field. And I struck out. Boom. There was a job right there at Mississippi State University. I got to go to grad school for $25 a semester to make about 30 grand a year as a research associate. And it wasn't just being the smart part now. You needed somebody dumb. My mate, Professor Hodges, later told me one time he couldn't take no straight A student because, man, we were going into clear cuts pre-GPS days, cuts that had been cut 10 years ago. Some grad student had gone out and open clear cut, put a piece of PVC pipe, measured a 10th acre plot and done regeneration. And 10 years later, we're having to hack in there with paces and compasses. And it was almost godless work. I'm gonna tell you what, it was the most inhospitable, hardworking job I ever had, but I loved it and I became good at it. And got a great degree in bottomland hardwood forestry, left there, went to work for the federal government, first with Fish and Wildlife Service, later with U.S. Department of Agriculture. And it was just, I think it was just kind of sort of meant to be. But Mike, I'll say this very honestly. I left Mississippi State University a forester, and my even though in both of those jobs, at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I was covering the refuge complexes in North Mississippi, doing the forestry concerns, 3 major national wildlife refuges, 100 plus easement type property under our management. And I did do some wildlife while I was there. I did do some waterfowl surveys and flying and getting some exposure because the biologist was more of a shorebird guy. And when I was working with USDA, it was forestry, but it was farm bill forestry. So a lot of the forestry may be productivity, but almost all the landowners had a wildlife interest. So I got a little bit of exposure to it, but truthfully, I never really found my place in wildlife management. You found your place in wildlife management. All those boys I went to school with that got degrees in wildlife that are now on our podcast as guests, they found their place, man. They were on their path and they stayed on that path. But for me, I never really felt like I found my voice and my place in wildlife management until many, many years later. I left federal government. Somebody asked me recently why, and I said, I don't know why. I did. My personality is such, I just felt compelled to work for myself. We opened up this travel company called GetDucks.com.
You jumped right into it then. You just launched. Yeah.
Well, I'd gone on a really bad hunt right after college. Really, really, really bad hunt. Really bad hunt. And I spent money I really didn't have. I'd gone onto it. I'd come back disappointed. The year was 1998. And so I started doing some research. The internet wasn't the internet then. I started doing some research, found an outfitter up in Alberta, brought some friends. Next year, more friends. And he called me out for a cold beer in the barn and said, man, I want you to be a booking agent. I go, what the heck, a booking agent? Man, I'm a forester. U.S. Department of Agriculture. He said, well, you send hunts, you sell me hunts, and come up here and hunt once a year if you'd like to, but I'll pay you a commission. And that was the birth of GetDucks.com.
That's awesome.
One hunt.
That's awesome.
And a few years later, I knocked on the supervisor's door and told him I was turning in my resignation. I mean, the year was 2010 or 11. And
about the time I was leaving Mississippi. That was about the time I was leaving Mississippi State.
I was holding hands with my wife. It's like we held hands. Now, you got to understand, I don't know what to do but work, Mike. I just work. It is my life purpose is to work. And at the time I left federal government, I was working 40 plus hours with the federal government. I was doing baseline reports, conservation easement type stuff, a little on the side. And I was building GetDucks.com, the real GetDucks.com, what became the real first iteration of GetDucks.com, the big and deep site. And there might be 3 or 4 nights I didn't even go to bed. I mean, literally going straight through. And one day my wife come in there and talked to me over coffee. She never got up that early, but she did. And we had a heart-to-heart talk, and she encouraged me to pick a direction, go stay with the federal government, go or do this. And but she said, whichever you go, I'll support you. And she's my life partner. We've been married 31 years this past month.
That's great.
And
that's great.
Raised a beautiful family and built a great life together. And that one thing led to another. But we talk all the time, at that time in our lives where we were, it was like holding hands, pitch black, dark night, not a star or moon in the sky, standing at the edge of a cliff and jumping, just hoping the water was deep enough we didn't die.
Yeah.
And but that's what we did. We threw ourselves into it. And that was, like I say, we formalized GetDucks.com in 2003. It became full-time in 2010. So I went from working 40 hours with the federal government to 120 hours a week for myself and never looked back. That's just kind of it. And I'll say this, finding my voice in wildlife. I was a guest on another podcast about 7 or 8 years ago. Some guys taught me in Mississippi, they taught me into coming on their podcast and telling a story about my childhood, about getting hurt. And that one story, I hadn't told parts of it ever. My kids were surprised. My wife was surprised. I was hearing from high school kids, man, they brought you back, and they told on intercom, don't ask and don't ask no question, don't look, just, and I just went on to live my life, but and it sparked something. It sparked something. It started something. And after, I began to record on that podcast, then I started my own podcast. And one time I was talking to a dear friend of mine who was a client but became a friend. And I was trying to meet some people up in Canada. And I knew he knew them. And I could talk an hour about kind of his path in life. But he said something to me. And it's just a retired firefighter. And he said, well, Ramsey, you think you're posting a bunch of pictures talking duck hunting on your podcast, but you're not. He said, you're preaching conservation. That's what me and everybody else are seeing. I'm sitting in these camps, Band in Branton, and everybody's talking about, kind of your narrative. And as I thought about that, I said, that's my voice. It always has been written, verbal communication, connecting people. And that's what I've tried to build on, Mike. I feel like in the world of conservation, which the world needs a lot of, increasingly we need conservation in North America and worldwide for waterfowl and for everything. But I feel like that's just kind of where I found my voice in wildlife management. I was young, I was naive when I went to Mississippi State University, wanted to be a deer biologist. At the end of the day, I just wanted to make the world a better place. I think if you get in this field, if your heart leads you into wildlife management, we've talked about this before, Mike. You're not expecting to be Bill Gates one day. You're getting into a very heartfelt, motivational, a purpose-driven life to make the world a better place.
Yep.
And it's funny how full circle it's come. And I'll finish up by saying this. We all went to school and back to them undergraduate days, those labs we had out in the field and doing stuff. Later, some of the technical jobs we got. That was the good old days, man. You're out in the field, you're cutting bushes and trapping rats and catching bobcats and trapping ducks and banding ducks, doing all this fun field stuff. But as you get into real life, into a career in wildlife management, it eclipses you. You take that rung or two, three up the ladder, and before long, your time in the field is limited. And my life is no different. And a few years ago, Phil Lavretsky reached out to me, knowing I was going to Africa. He had some research needs, and he asked me to collect some genetic data and photos and measurements of all these, a few African black ducks and a lot of African yellow-billed ducks. Man, sitting there at night, I couldn't do it in front of people. I couldn't get my flow going. I had to take the duck. I had to make, 10 measurements, 10 or 11 photos, and organize it all good, record it in data sheets, take a little sample, put it up in some kind of substrate he had. And so I needed to be by myself. And it just, all I could think was, man, 30-something years ago, I've made a full circle. I'm right back to what led me into this field. What an interesting path life took me on.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ramsey. And I tell you, looking and listening to kind of your career path, it's funny. We both started in forestry and then realized we were wildlife people. We all both ended up with podcasts. I don't travel nearly as much as you do. I'm a homebody. But a lot of our past, despite that I'm from New York and you're from Mississippi, are relatively similar. It's chasing the dream and just putting your best foot forward every single day and chasing organically kind of what's next. And that's right. That's kind of where I'm at. And, one of the things that I've always said to folks is if you got a message to put out there, the conservation world is a big united place and you should have your voice in it. And so appreciate your voice and, where you're at with things and getting other people into duck hunting as well. So,
the crazy thing a lot of people don't realize that I learned in college and still think about a lot today. In fact, when I got that job at Mississippi State University, 2 foresters and a wildlifer had applied for it. And I didn't learn till a year or two later that he only interviewed me because I'd been so persistent. He had no intention whatsoever of hiring a wildlife major. He wanted a forester. And then one of his students asked me one time, said, what did you say to him during that interview? Because you weren't even down, you hadn't even walked down the stairs and hit the first floor when he come in there and said, y'all know that guy? He's your new research associate.
Yep.
And he had asked me, what does a wildlifer, why does a wildlifer want to learn about this bottomland hardwood silviculture? It was the truth. It was, Aldo Leopold, the father of wildlife management, was a forester. And at a time in American history when the government, the states, and everybody just said, wildlife is a depleting resource. Mm-hmm. We're going to spend it. We got money in the bank and we're going to spend it till it's gone like the passenger pigeons. Here comes a forester saying, wait a minute, that could be true, but I think we could take a lot of sustained yield models and concepts out of forestry and apply it to wildlife too. I believe it might be a renewable resource like timber. And that became the field of wildlife management. And I said, and in that same way, if I'm going to practice wildlife management in the Deep South, managing the habitat, boy, let me tell you what, you don't get out of Mississippi State University with a forestry or wildlife degree without knowing pine silviculture.
Yep.
I said, I'd like a crack at these hardwoods. 80% of the Mississippi alluvial valley has been cleared. I'd kind of like a practice this right here. And it led to something. I left Mississippi State University, and the reason I got that job with Fish and Wildlife Service, the last question that supervisor asked me before he hired me, he said, "Are you sure you want this job? Are you sure you want this job? Because in the next 5 years, you've got to plant 10,000 acres of hardwoods. And that's going to be your responsibility." Well,
Yeah.
man, I knew all about artificial regeneration. I'm like, I'm in, dude. That's what I want to do. Well, as it turns out, I left 3 years later to take a job with USDA and was involved, worked with a lot of people, all the refuge complexes in actually 4 or 5 states,
Nice.
and had a hand in 60,000 acres hardwood reforestation in the Deep South.
True.
A carbon sequestration company had come in and made an offer Fish and Wildlife couldn't refuse.
So I remember, Ramsey, my wife and I spent time across, I think, 54 wetland reserve easements in Mississippi in the summer. So you're planting trees and we're putting points in and IDing plants, avoiding cottonmouths best we can.
Yeah, there's
Gators.
plenty of them. I guarantee
pushing through the largest stands of coffee weed you've ever seen, and trying to, like, we would get to a site at a half hour before sunrise and drive in with the ATV to make sure we were taking data as soon as we could, because by noon in July and August, we worked every single month in the Delta of Mississippi throughout the heat of summer. She's Canadian. I'm from New York. So it was good times. But I pushed to come to your part of the world to see the ducks, right? And see the duck habitat. So I always tell kids, you've traveled a bunch, but travel north, south, east, west, and across the continent. We'll talk about that a little bit later. How many days have you had empty skies over the duck blind? Your property can be more with Wildlife Strategies. It is no secret that hiring a consultant, an expert in managing water, woods, and fields, an expert in duck food, an expert in hunting pressure management, hiring a consultant yields better habitat for the critters you chase. Less empty skies, more quality days of field, more smiles for miles with family and friends. If that's your game and goal, contact Ryan Delaney at ryan@farmlg.com for a site visit. And hey, here's the deal. I'm filled up for summer 2025 with clients up north, but if our northern friends have a property in need of some love, contact me at Dr. Mike at FowlWeather.co for a summer 2026 site visit. You talked about kind of taking concepts from forestry, thinking about sustainable yield. That kind of gets us into the waterfall status report from this year, and everybody's been talking about the status of ducks and where we're at in the bottom. I'm going to kind of leave it open-ended for you in general here as somebody who's a duck guide. What are your thoughts on where we're at with ducks right now in the waterfall status report that came out?
Man, I tell you what, I was pleasantly surprised to see that many breeding birds in the report. I just really was. I was not expecting it. Haven't done a deep dive. I've been keeping up with some threads on it. And, I was pleased. That's all I can say. All my reports and everybody I'm talking to throughout the prairies and the potholes and the parklands up in the Dakotas and Canada is everybody I'm talking to, it seemed bleak. Very, very bleak. I don't know what the production is, so therefore we don't know what the numbers are going to be next year. And I believe that before it gets way, way better, it's going to get worse. I don't know how it can't as dry as it is. You know what I'm saying? But I was pleased to see this many adult birds, and I'm optimistic, man. If you're a duck hunter in this day and age in North America, you've got to be optimistic.
Yeah, and I agree. I felt like, I looked at it and I'm like, man, and then I went back and looked at the stats. I'm like, the last 3 years, just talking about mallards. Mallard populations have been statistically the same for 3 years, despite really bad conditions in general. To me, says we're at least, have enough out there to put enough juveniles back into the population, or these adults are at least surviving. And that might be part of it, is that maybe we're just not killing these things. We've had pretty mild winters, a little bit of a cold front that pushes them down and they get hit a little bit. But it looks to me like, the system's kind of working. I know there's a lot of naysayers about AHM and where we're at right now and asking for cutbacks and stuff. But, ducks have bottomed out before, Ramsey. I guess a question for you is, does this one feel different to you at all, or is it kind of the same as the other stuff you've been through?
It doesn't feel different to me, Mike. I mean, we in the United States are blessed. We are duck hunters complain. I mean, we're that type, man. The only thing worse than not killing ducks is hearing or seeing that somebody else has or did.
Yeah.
And and I think it's disheartening sometimes to go out. And but I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be good. I think we got to keep it up. And I'm very, very pleased. I was looking up when this waterfowl status report was released in social media. I checked in on a couple of threads, and man, there were people were killing too many in Canada and Mexico and blah blah blah. I looked those numbers up online. It's easy to do, man. You got a cell phone in your hand. You've got more answers at your fingertips than George W. Bush did the day he was sworn in as the most important person in the universe.
Yeah.
And I knew that around 21, 22, the United States of America shot about 8.5 million ducks. And I would argue, prove me wrong, that's more than all the rest of the world combined. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised to learn as I got to looking at that it was the 22-23 season, over 14 million ducks were killed. I guarantee that loop around the rest of the world combined a couple of times, I'm guessing. You know what I'm saying? It just really would. And yet here we go with all these years of increasing drought. Look at the numbers, man. The numbers don't lie. The birds are off a little bit, but they're not off much. I was real pleased and surprised to see that the pintails aren't doing well long-term average. They're down 40%, but man, they're hanging in there. The gadwalls, the teal are hanging in there. I don't know where. Gadwalls like those little bitty bodies of water, which I thought had been gone, but they're hanging in there, man. These birds are far more resilient than we give them credit for.
Well, gadwall for years over here in the east, when the prairies got dry, there were periods and folks will be familiar with this name if they follow me quite a bit, is Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge. There's old records of finding 50, 60 nests of gadwall in the marsh. They're not here. They're not here now, really. But recently, there's a guy that works in the St. Lawrence River on muskies and pike. He's a fish guy. But all those little rock ledges in the Thousand Islands in the St. Lawrence, he said, this summer, out of nowhere, there's gadwall nesting on like every single island. That's a duck that is a prairie specialist, but when things get dry, as far as I can tell, and this is just anecdotal and speculating, I think they just blast out of that center and they just go wherever they can, right? The one thing that is a constant in this world is that birds in general, especially waterfowl, have been successful because they're more diverse than what we think they are with their breeding habitat to a large degree. They have
wings. There's no fence in the sky. They've evolved after millions of years to survive, and they do the best they can.
Well, what's crazy is that one of the things people don't know is that when you use Lincoln estimators, which is you ban so many, I'm not going to do the math here with y'all, but you ban so many birds, you shoot so many birds, and then you get recoveries of so many birds. And from that, you can calculate in an open population, saying the whole continent, how many mallards are there, you can get an estimate. And surprisingly or not surprisingly, because mallards are everywhere, it comes out as almost twice the breeding population survey that we get, twice the number. So if there's 6 million, it tells us there's 12. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden, none of this matters and the trends don't matter, right? Because the core area where the boom or bust of mallard populations tends to happen is the prairies. But it just says that, beyond the scope of this area, there are other birds. Now, things like blue wings, shovelers, those are really kind of more straight up prairie specialists. So they're going to, live and die by the water that's out there. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing right now, Ramsey, with the blue-winged teal population, and people are freaking out. But, they're pretty capable of recovering when weather conditions get right. So the hope now is that we're at the bottom. And I think this is a straight up weather thing, right? Is that kind of where you're at? Like, you've seen the weather turn around, the prairies get wet again, and, numbers jump back up before, right?
That's right. That's right. It's cyclical. We all know it's cyclical. And you see the same thing around the world. South America, prime example. They get wet, in wet years they got booms, and dry years they don't have near as many. And they're coming out of a dry period. They've been in a drought. Argentina, I'm talking about, been in a drought for the past couple of years. And parts of it were in a drought this past fall, but now they are wet, and more ducks than you can shake a stick at.
But hey, under adaptive harvest management, I mean, if our ponds go way low and our mallard numbers drop, I mean, people have to be ready for a moderate or a restrictive season, a 45 or 30. It's still completely possible.
That's right.
And that's the safety net that's out there, right? When things plummet, we self-correct. I'm a harvest doesn't matter person in general. For most species, I've gone over. That's not true of all species, blah, blah, blah. Been called out for it. But at some point it does. And at some point you've got to give ducks space to rebuild their population. And that's built into AHM. So
that's right.
The Farmland Group is your one-stop shop for real estate brokerage, consulting, management, lending, and appraisal across Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, and growing. Contact them today at farmlg.com. Hey, I'm telling you, do not hesitate, because these folks are busy buying, selling, and providing consulting and management strategies that build value into your portfolio and your land. So get in the queue today. Get on their radar. Get on their books. Man, y'all won't be disappointed. Contact the Farmland Group today at farmlg.com. That's farmlg.com. You, I'm guessing, as a lad, grew up on the public hunting end of things. That public hunting kind of across what I call Duck Country USA has changed a lot, I think, and culturally has changed a lot. What, in your lifetime, do you feel, I'm going to say, in your lifetime, what do you think has changed? And at the beginning of this, you were talking about old fellas that were using Piros and pulling in, 4 hours to shoot their ducks and stuff. And I don't think that's a thing anymore. Mud motors are the norm, and surface drives and all that. But what has changed, and what's your general sentiment towards it? And please take the time you want to dig into this one.
What has changed? That's a great question. It's like one time, I feel like sometimes after the decades I've spent doing what I do, dealing with duck hunters and clients and organizing trips, I sometimes think I live in somewhat of an echo chamber that I have created, to where most clients that contact us think or act similarly. You know what I'm saying? They want experiences. They want to have a great time. They want quality events. You know what I'm saying? Whether they're going to Argentina or somewhere in the U.S. hunt list, I feel like I live in an echo chamber. One time I met with this old game warden, retired game warden in Oklahoma. I said, what do you think about modern duck hunters? Do you think they've changed? And he said, when you got your driver's license, did you squill the tires on your daddy's car? I go, yeah. He says, well, you think 15-year-old kids do that now? I go, yeah. He said, that's what I think about duck hunters changing. Okay, and hold that thought. If people don't change, people are people. But a lot of what I see changing, and for the record, I did cut my teeth on public land, and to this day, from the Pacific Flyway clear out to West Virginia and beyond, North America, I hunt public land. I still hunt a lot of public land. As the guest of others, freelancing for myself, we hunt public land. And again, relative to much older countries like the United Kingdom, we've got an abundance of public land. We really, truly do. But relative to, a couple of things that are changing, and it's like a multivariable equation. It's not, you can't say just one thing. It's other things are changing. I do believe we have far less access than my father and granddaddy had. And I've had men on our podcast that were hunting back in the 60s and 70s that talked about just driving north of Greenwood, Mississippi, and seeing a swag or slash with a bunch of ducks in it, and It didn't matter who owned it. You could just stop and go hunting. Those days are long, long, long gone. And if you see it from a land use perspective, it wasn't just 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. One province in the state of Louisiana pulled out 65 pits, assuming each pit blind equaled a quarter section of water. That's a whole lot of wintering waterfowl habitat and generations old places people duck hunting gone because farming practices have changed. Look, that little bit of money I'm getting for duck lease don't match nothing to getting that soil right for the fall. And you're seeing it throughout the lower Mississippi alluvial valley. Those practices have changed. Now you get into the fact more and more people is that amount of places to hunt is shrinking. Well, duck hunters are shrinking too. I think in the last 20 years, 25 years, we've gone from 2.5 million duck hunters to about 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how can it be? How can it possibly be that? Well, see, here's what's happening with duck hunters. You asked about duck hunting culture. Well, cultures are made up of people, and people are people. But what's changed with the average duck hunter? So it's becoming more highly concentrated. Much fewer hunters are becoming more highly distilled in a shrinking landscape. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what's happening is if you look back at my ancestors, our daddy, especially our granddaddy's generation, man, my granddaddy was a duck hunter. He was my benchmark for duck hunting. And he probably duck hunted 10 or 15 times a year. He might take a week out on the river to go Canada goose hunting. Who does that anymore? Nobody. I mean, I would dare say the average duck hunter in the United States of America, age 30 to 50, I'd say the average duck hunter hunts 4 times more than the yesteryear hunter.
Yep.
And therein lies the problem.
Fewer hunters going way more.
Fewer hunters going, but they're way more serious. They're better equipped.
Yep.
We've got motors that did not exist. I was meeting with an old timer down in Louisiana the day when he was 13 years old. He was push poling 4.5 hours to get into a cloud of birds, the like of which he's never seen. Well, those mud motors will get you right up to them today.
Yep.
So I'm saying, unless that area for some reason closed the motor vehicle access.
More time, more time, maps, and motors.
That's it. And plus we got warmer clothes. I was talking to somebody the other day. Man, look, I wear the latest, greatest. I love Sitka gear, and I do mean love, not like. I love that gear.
Yeah.
But there are days that it is so inhospitable when I step out the door, out of the truck, and start putting on my clothes. It is bone chilling cold. It is wet. It is miserable. And I'm probably better dressed than Buzz Aldrich was when he stepped off Apollo 13 onto the moon.
Yes, sir.
And so I can sit that out more. I can sit out there more. And in a lot of ways, Mike, we're blessed with an abundance of ducks. 14.5 million ducks in a recent season, just not geese, ducks, right here in the United States. Well, if in the past if in the past you were only shooting 3 or 4 ducks as a limit, let's say during the point system, you're in mallard country or shooting canvasbacks, let's say during a restrictive season, well, it takes twice as long for a guy to shoot 6 ducks as 3. And look at California, blessed with speckled bellies they are. The limit is 10. Man, look, it takes 5 times longer, all things equal, to shoot 10 speckled bellies. And who's going to leave when they shoot 2? Now I'm gonna stay with 10 because the limit's 10. So I'm hunting more and longer and harder.
Yep.
On less ground. And
I
think it's changing, man.
Yeah, and preaching to the same point, I always say, like, look, you could shoot your 6 ducks, but if you've got 4 ducks by 9 o'clock, this is me, right? Pick your day. This is the FowlWeather Podcast way. Find your days to go, pick them. Go have good hunts. If by 9 o'clock you got 4 ducks, just go home. Because you're going to scrap out 2 more. You're going to piss off other hunters around you because you're still in the marsh. You're going to piss off ducks in the time. And instead, you could have left at 9 and had ducks using the marsh. And then whoever maybe didn't have as good of a spot kind of birds filter into that. Maybe it's a little bit of I guess altruism on my point, but my sense is that we're just so damn hell bent on shooting that limit, Ramsey, and it which is fine, and it doesn't hurt the population, but maybe we don't run up against that as much as we don't have to always. That doesn't have to always be the benchmark of it. Success doesn't always need to be 6 birds or 15 birds.
I agree with that.
Whatever.
I agree with that. But let me argue this too. My granddad, he was that practical, went through Depression, went through the Great Flood in Mississippi, come up from nothing, became a small town attorney, went to World War II because the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor, the works. And he was practical. One of my favorite photos of my granddad, I would guess just from looking at the photo, he was 30 to 35 years old. And he's sitting on a high sandbar in the Mississippi River. It's just a black and white photo, a snapshot of him. And it's black and white, but you can tell it's a real clear sky. You can tell that the front has just moved through. He's on the top of a sandbar, and he's wearing a World War II flight jumpsuit, just a canvas jumpsuit. But I can tell that wind is howling because his fists are balled up. He's sitting there just kind of posing for the picture, but you can tell that wind. I've been on those sandbars when that wind's blowing like that, and that wind is cutting him in half. And that's what he wore. But now think about this, Mike, man, consumer credit is cheap. It's cheap. How else would the average 20-something, 30-something-year-old duck hunter have a $600 dog box, $600 ice chest, a $70,000 vehicle, pulling a $70,000 boat with shooting a $2,000 shotgun and $2 a trigger pull shells and a $150 duck call and a $1,500 dog at $500 a month training, blah, 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 blah. They just go down a lease and this and gas at $3.50 a gallon, on and on and on and on and on. And man, you start running the numbers of what a duck season going cost, man, it'll wake you up. But hey, it's consumer credit. It's easy, it's cheap. And I was talking to some boys recently up there in Memphis. Beautiful duck boat, beautiful. God, man, what a fine duck boat. Mike, my only duck boat is one I bought right out of college for $3,000. It's a John boat I painted brown and put a 25 horse motor on and a pop-up blind, one of Avery's first in Mossy Oak. And, still got that boat. My kid uses it. But golly, man, these boats are $70,000, $80,000, $90,000.
Well, and
they'll finance them for 20 or 30 years. So I'm asking you, Mike.
That's been a huge change.
It's been a huge change, but
I had an 870. My buddies and I each bought a dozen Flambeau water kill decoys for $19.99. We bought a box of shells, and we wet weighted to pick our ducks up when we shot them.
I get it.
That's where we started, right?
That's how I started.
And I don't see that as much anymore. I feel like it's an arms race for the best equipment, which I don't. Heck, if you got it, go for it.
But wait a minute, Mike. If you've got a monthly note on a duck boat and a truck, and you've got the latest, greatest, state of the art everything, how can you justify leaving the duck hole at
going
9
home?
o'clock?
Right.
And you know what else exists right now?
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
We're all a slave to it. Social media, man. Social media. You know what I'm saying? I mean, whether you deny it or not, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah. Man.
Yep.
I've got to prove myself. So, I mean, when you talk about the duck hunting culture or duck hunters in general, that's it. I think that's kind of it. In our granddaddy's generation, that world's greatest generation, it was practical, plucked all their birds, ate all the birds, did everything. I mean, that generation is long and gone.
Yeah. I'm still living it, honestly. It's where I'm at. Always have been. I'm going to die that person probably, but buddies, I bought a boat and I sold it. I'm still push-pulling around the marsh here, and when I need to get out and get on the big water, I find friends and go with people. I've got enough goose decoys to sit in the field and kill geese, but I don't have a trailer, When
we talk about this topic, anytime we talk about numbers, anytime we talk about this topic, it always comes up, well, Mexico's killing too many. Somebody's killing too many, we're killing too many, we're killing too many. And I think that's got to do a lot with what the individual is seeing in his part of the world.
Yeah.
Now let's sum up what we just talked about the modern day duck hunter as it reflects a modern duck hunting culture. We're hunting 4 times as many. We've got this enormous expendable wealth that we're spending an unprecedented amount of money doing it. We're putting unprecedented hunting pressure and disturbance. I mean, to kill 14,000 ducks 2 or 3 years ago, that's a lot. That's a lot of man days out in the field.
Yep.
There's no way around it.
Yep.
And so I think that the ducks may be there hiding where they can in the nooks and crannies, but boy, the landscape is covered with both disturbance and hunting pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think, we're kind of our own worst evil. If we all picked up and left at 9 o'clock, if we all took 10 or 15 shells to the blind, if we all honored, get them in close, shoot small boars, bam, bam, and we were in and out, the world would be a lot better place. But man, we know that's not going to happen.
It's not. I mean, bigger, better is always better, right? So, I mean, there's clubs on Lake St. Clair on the Canadian side that have ponds that are like 30 acres, and all they actually let the Phragmites, which is an invasive plant, grow. All they're allowed to shoot is over under 20 gauges or 28 gauges, and they're allowed 15 shells for their limit. And they get in and they get out. So there's a lot of folks that and man, I struggle with it. I'm like, they want to run their motor, they want to run their music, and they want to shoot 3 boxes of shells no matter how many ducks they bring home or whatever, right? And I don't know. I have a hard time understanding that as somebody who didn't grow up with it. But I think mostly where I get to it is like, if it wasn't bad for the ducks, I don't care. I honestly don't care. Go do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
But if it becomes a conservation issue where you're causing disturbance, you're reducing the quality of the landscape for the ducks and reducing their overall condition going back north, you're not sending them back, strong to make more ducks because of the disturbance factor. There's something to be said there for maybe we went a little overboard.
It may not just be us duck hunters, Mike. It could be, I read something just the other day, and they were citing another problem, another social ill. It just seems to be that more and more modern day people are all about themselves instead of the greater good. We've become a very selfish people, individually. We're a very individualistic society, and I think there seems to be a lot more take than give, but we know we have to give. We know, we can't just be all take. We have to give back to this resource too, be it, and we can't just say, well, I bought a shotgun. That's my Pittman Robertson dollars going to work for me. No, you can't be that guy. We got to put our time and money till it hurts. I really do believe that. And that's where I think duck hunting culture is. But I will say this, I do think, at least in my echo chamber, I do think that most duck hunters, I think their heart's in the right place. I think they're very serious people. I think they do give what they can, and I really do think most people, speaking 90% of the humanity on earth, try to be the best people they can be. I really do believe that. I have found in the past 25 years that most duck hunters that I have met worldwide are some of the best people on earth. I mean, they'll give you anything, do anything. And I'll tell you, could you ask about public land? I'll say this too. I think the best duck hunters on earth hunt public land in America.
For sure.
Go out there and go become one of them refuge rats in California.
Yeah.
Buddy, those guys that are coming out with ducks consistently are hardcore duck killers. They will. There's no distance too far. They'll play smart. They'll walk in miles pulling their little sleds, and they'll stay all day, and they'll do the best they can. And I think that says a lot to who they are as people and who they are as duck hunters.
And I'll give you that. This is the thing about why waterfowl are doing better than other birds on this planet is duck hunters are passionate.
Yes.
And all the social media chatter and stuff. And I've stopped, I did a podcast a few weeks ago. I'm like, look, I'm not debating anymore. We're going to put facts up. If you throw hate mail at the FowlWeather Podcast about things we say, we're going to react to it here. Might make one comment on social media, but I'm not touching it because I appreciate that you are in the game. You care. That's the biggest part of it, because there's just too damn many people on this planet that don't care about ducks, don't care about wild places, don't care about wetlands, don't care about grasslands. We need everybody that cares about the ducks to be in this. And the FowlWeather Podcast does this. I know you do it, Ramsey. We try to get that good information into people's hands so that they're well educated about this and not misinformed on a lot of these topics.
That's right.
On the hunting on public land thing, I can't agree more. I've hunted with people. I've never leased land. It's because mostly it's more of a southern thing. There's more hunters in the south. We have an abundance of land up here. Please don't come up here and lease land. It's creeping in. We still have it. It's part of the capitalistic system. I'm not against it. But mostly what I do is get permission or hunt public land. And it takes a lot of work to get in and do well in those crowds. And then there's the people, even in the draw hunts. There's one individual at Duck Creek for years that it would be 0, 0, 0 on the board, and this guy would go in, and there'd be 6 ducks. And you'd know that it was him, because he knew every blind at Duck Creek in Missouri, and just knew the right wind, when to hunt it, when not. And I'm not giving his name up, but man, he had it dialed in. The man must have a mathematical equation for every single blind by the wind, the temperature, the time the ducks are there. But that's what's cool, is even on those draw hunts that are public land, you can still learn them in a way if you spend enough time to get to know the ducks and get to know the places. And to me, that is just super cool local knowledge. I've got a refuge 2 hours away from me that's like that. There's other people that know how to hunt it, but I only get there twice a year.
Yeah.
So I can't kill them like other people do. Now, the 1.5 hour down my road, I'm pretty dialed in nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it's what makes it fun. It's what sets people apart. It's why I've always said we should probably have good public hunting 1 hour from everybody's house, because that's what people want. And as soon as you do that, then everybody's got a place they can figure out. They don't crowd into each other as much as they normally would.
That's right.
But yeah,
That's right.
Good stuff, Ramsey. Beckman Game Calls has it dialed in. If you want a duck call that is adjustable to your air pressure and sounds like a duck, this is it. I've blown a ton of different calls in my life, but this one is the real deal. Look, we don't endorse just anything. We are only going to put forward a call that works. The Edison by Chris Beckman of Beckman Game Calls, yeah, this beauty sounds like a duck. I only know of one published research paper focused on what makes a duck call sound like a duck. Go look me up, and you will see that colleagues and I have the only paper published in scientific literature about what makes a duck call sound like a duck. For sure, Chris Beckman did his homework, and this call sounds like a duck. This guy knows how to make a duck call, period. But don't just take my word for it. Here's the proof. First, a hen recording, and then the Edison in the big woods of Arkansas. Visit them today at BeckmanGameCalls.com. 3 pintails.
Heck yeah.
We keep switching. Heck yeah, that's where I'm at, right?
Yeah,
it's an
get the
experimental
Cali, yeah.
season until you tell me I can't do it or we learn something different. The model says we can do it. Let's give it a run.
Man, we had some conversations about this with some guys that know way more than me, Mike, and you know more than me about the science. But all I know is some of the curves they were showing me, some of the charts and graphs, that the curve and everything was showing me that really and truly probably could shoot 7. Really and truly, probably, but it would be an absolute political coup. There a civil war break out if they
It's not it's not
socially.
socially acceptable.
It's
That's
not
the problem.
socially acceptable.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
problem. It's biopolitics.
Yep.
But three pintails, um, Fish and Wildlife and the managers that have shown us they just like the blue-winged teal response with adaptive harvest management, they've showed us that they can be adaptable, they can respond. Why not? You know what I'm saying? Because we know that harvest is not what's limiting pintail numbers. And,
Right.
and if you think so, I'm sorry, you're wrong. That is not what's driving pintail numbers. Since
Period.
the mid
Yes.
70s, the conversion to this no-till farming, that poor pintail that evolved in short grass prairie as a short grass prairie nester, where she can sit on her nest and pop her head up like a periscope and look over that little short grass prairie for predators and get back down. She can't make the distinction between last year's wheat and barley and short grass prairie, and here comes the tractors, and that's what's happening to our poor pintails. And it's not Mexico. It is not Mexico, people. They've got limits on pintails too. It is not Mexico. They winter 20% of the North American population. They're not killing them all. It's not Mexico. It's not Canada. It is simply a matter of a bottleneck in habitat. And if they do displace because the prairies are dry up there into Alaska, the productivity decreases. They just can't. They can't. Okay, well, I go up here and nest. I've got habitat, but I can't produce as many as I do in that short grass prairie.
That's what they're doing. They've moved into the parkland, the boreal. We used feather sampling from Great Lakes harvested, Great Lakes like Ontario, New York, harvested pintails over to kind of the Ohio region. And they're coming from Hudson Bay, like James Bay lowlands, and up around the Ungava Peninsula where Canada geese are. Right? So the Atlantic okay, we're only 1% of the pintail harvest anyway, which is ridiculous, right? So this is what's always fun, Ramsey, when I talk to you, is I'm always worried about people. I advertise my local neighborhood, but it's not even worth coming over to. We still have it good where it's good, but it's not good many places. But the point is that these are still, as we talked before, pretty adaptable animals, and pintails are, they're going to have a lower duckling per hen output. But they're still there, and they're still pumping them out. And the one thing we're seeing, too, are more adults in the population because hens are struggling to survive in a kind of predator-filled landscape without a lot of cover. And if you raise this limit, what's going to happen is who really shoots these things? There's some at the northern extent before they get color, but in no way am I trying to shoot a hen pintail. So most people are just shooting drakes anyway.
That's right.
And so the likelihood of us harming this population is low, but it's an experimental season. It goes on for 3 years. I think it could go longer if there's like a threshold we have to hit to understand how we're affecting the population. But it has like really strong safety valves to it, and we're not going to shoot them to extinction in any possible way. And you're never getting back. Like everybody says, well, they're 41% down. How does this make sense? I'm like, we're never getting back there. The capacity of the landscape, given how they nest, just isn't there. So we're not getting it back.
I'm hopeful. I'm just imagine, if you would, if all of a sudden winter, it's getting warmer, Mike. We're in a periodic warming trend globally. I mean, who's to say in 10 or 15 years or less or more that winter wheat don't become a thing up on the Canadian prairies? Wouldn't that be a boon to have all of a sudden have some habitat that's not being harvested, short grass prairie for a period of time while these birds are flying up and getting on their nest, and it's not going to be harvested until they've already nested and fledged and gone. I mean, that would save pintail. That would help. I mean, if all this tariff war stuff were to continue or hit a fevered pitch, I'd hate it for the farmers, but what if some of these fields are abandoned and converted or allowed to revert back into a short grass prairie type system? But short of that, you're right. We're never going to see the former high unless we fill in that black hole into which all of the pintails in North America are disappearing.
Alberta, Saskatchewan, the places they want to be, which has also been dry at the same time.
That's right.
Right. I mean, it's a farm methodology plus dry. So, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm excited about it. We've got places here, very few of them, that we hunt near home when we get in on the, it's a draw system for the refuge. But when we get in, I mean, I've had days. Wife and I 5 years ago came out with 9 ducks on opening day, and we were regularly decoying flocks of 50 and 100 pintails after we had our one. So it'd be nice to add them to the bag and understand that maybe it's not so bad for those birds. So if next year conditions go bad, AHM says we got a moderate season at 45 days, 6 ducks, 4 that can be mallards, 1 that can be a hen. So that's the moderate season, or a restrictive season at 30 days, 3 ducks for the day, 2 that can be mallards, and only 1 of those can be a hen mallard. Ramsey, would that bother you if we go to a moderate or restrictive season in the Mississippi Flyway?
Thank you for asking that question. I interviewed my old buddy Warren Coco down in Louisiana, and so many of his stories from back in the day when he was developing that Go Devil motor. He remembers the 10-point pintail day and going out in his part of the world and shooting 10 pintail or 10 teal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, boom, by the time we get to the 80s, he's on 3 ducks. And I asked him, I said, well, how'd y'all go from 10 to 3? How'd that fell out? He said, we hunted every single day, stopped at 3 ducks. And I think when you start talking about this, my fears, am I going to still go hunting? Heck yeah, man. Give me a pair of mallards for 2 or 3 ducks and I'm happy. I mean, that's what I'm shooting now most days, right? I don't need 6 ducks. And come 9 or 10 or so o'clock, 3 ducks, I'm gone to the house. But Mike, here's what bothers me. I was talking to a friend of mine, Mr. Gene Campbell. He's been a hunting guide down in Southwest Texas for 50 years, let's say. And he remembers the last time we had a restrictive season, and 75% of his clients quit hunting and never came back. Well, we've already said we went from 2.5 million about that time of era to 1 million duck hunters. And we all know that hunting is conservation, our time and our money. We've talked about that previously in this episode. What happens if we lose 50 to 75% of existing duck hunters? Now there's people going, heck, man, there'll be less people at the boat ramp. No, there won't be.
Mm-hmm.
No, there won't be. What we're going to see if that season contracts, I believe, is you're going to see a lot of private landowners on which 70+% of habitat as expressed in kilocalories exist, thanks to the time and money of private landowners that benefit the entire region at the habitat level. I think you're going to see their commitments to time and money wither.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we've got less habitat. Again, and that's what's killing everything, killing pintails, killing everything. It is less habitat, less habitat. We need more. We need, hunters and our time and our money and our voices are political capital. That's all politicians see. And at what point do we become irrelevant? That's my only fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only fear, that we're going to see a big decline. And when I look at this, Mike, I'll leverage this in with it too. It is when we going back to your question about the highs and lows and the cyclicals of it all. It's all about the habitat in North America. And we may never see a lot of these species rebound to a former high, because as we continue during a drought, during a decline in hunting, during all the repercussions of that, how can we possibly, when the stars line up and the prairies are wet and everything's in place, how can we possibly, that ball bounce back up to a former high? I don't think it's going to be that way. I think that the future highs in duck numbers are going to be lower than the past highs. And that's disturbing to me, because it's all about hunter participation. Mm-hmm. Like it or hate it, however many people are in your duck hole opening day on public lands, dude, we've got to have numbers. United we stand, divided we fall. It's a numbers game. We've got to have hunters on the horizon.
And I think for the next question, I had a longer, convoluted way of asking it, Ramsey, but I think this leads perfectly into it, because what I get from people is the reason we have liberal seasons is follow the money. and they're not wrong, but I think they're interpreting it incorrectly, in that the concept of going to a more restrictive season, losing all those duck hunters, losing the capacity of folks that would manage habitat, is something that we're not sure if that would happen, but we're afraid of it. But with the way that people use it, right, is that they think that somehow you and I, like, and honestly, I'm just speculating, but given that your full-time job is getducks.com and all the stuff you do and all your guide service, which is very well run, functions on duck hunting. My speculation is you're pulling in a full-blown quality paycheck. My stuff's like little side money at best. I'm not. Man, I could stop doing this. 30 years, but go ahead. I get you. I could stop doing this and probably be ahead financially for my hours put in, is what I'm going with. But the point is, people feel like somehow we're getting some kickback, or we're influencing the people that are making decisions, or like Ducks Unlimited and Delta has their hand in some pocket of some politician, and that ain't happening. That's the comment, is that I think as a community, our thought is that, man, if these birds can take this, what's the point of taking it away from people? And all of the industry, the habitat that goes on the ground along with that, the interest in the birds, it's all wrapped together, right? That three-legged stool of people, habitat, and ducks.
What a lot of people are seeing is the monetization of product. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be them. That's what's driving it. Well, yes and no. We talked about how blessed we are to have a science-based North American model that produces 8 to 14 million ducks.
Yep.
And that is state and federal governments, research universities and wings within the state and federal governments, and NGOs like Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl, and a whole lot more, all being underpinned by a rabid and savvy and aggressive, hunts more than any generation ever has, duck hunting market that is buying because of cheap credit a whole lot of product. The Pittman Robertson coming off that product, that is the underpinning. That is what that money and conservation, hunting is conservation, really truly is. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? That's why we've got what we've got. And so you can hate the commercialization of it all, but you've got to recognize that the fringe benefit is an abundance of ducks and a model, a North American model of conservation that nobody else in the world has.
Right.
And that's just the long and the short of it. And I mean, Mike, man, it's somebody like yourself that has so many of state and federal and private landowners and NGO and scientists and people come on here. First and foremost, they're all duck hunters, just like me and you, just like everybody listening. They are duck hunters.
100%.
Yeah, they want what's best for the resource, and we all do. And so I really do think we're all on the same team, and I just, if you're not seeing the duck numbers in your backyard that you think there should be, move or hunt it less or hunt it differently.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because in the 22-23 season, the United States of America shot 14.5 million ducks. And if that was the worst duck season you ever had, you need to hunt somewhere different.
Yeah. I recall, I think you listened to our podcast early on, and this has been something I've probably said a dozen times on the podcast. If you sit against the same old oak tree every single year for the last 20 years and expect the same exact result every single year, you got it. You got duck hunting wrong, because ducks are adaptable and they're going to move and you got to follow them. And you said, man, when you said that, you hooked me and I knew I had to have you on the podcast. And I think that just rings true. I go as far now, because I just like to say brazen things and piss people off sometimes. Like, if you ain't killing ducks and the country killed 14 million ducks last year, you might just suck at duck hunting.
Yeah,
right? Like,
or you might be overhunting your property, or you might need to do
yeah,
some habitat
yeah,
tweaking,
yeah.
or
I mean, it's
who
tongue
knows
in
what.
cheek. I get it. Like, I have wholly bone bad years too, right? Like, I'm not acting like I know everything about, ducks and can just go anywhere and kill a
But
duck.
that's
And
duck
it
hunting,
depends
Mike.
on the location, your resources, and lots of factors,
My
obviously.
buddy
So,
Ryan Graves, who collects a lot of historical artifacts, duck calls, duck decoys, duck memorabilia, old stuff. He showed me a journal he had one time from a duck hunter back in the very late 1800s, early 1900s. The guy kept a meticulous journal. And on one winter day, he said, "Look at this post right here. You'll love it. Man, this is the absolute pre-migratory bird treaty act heyday of North America." And the guy, all he wrote down was, "Didn't kill shit."
yeah,
It happens, man. It's duck
yeah,
hunting, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, we try to avoid it, but it's out there for sure. But yeah, I would do want to go back to the follow the money. Like, you'll just see that on social media, follow the money. And I just got to put it out there in the space of podcast world, internet space, whatever the heck we're in here, Ramsey, is that nobody's getting paid off anything, right?
No,
It's a bastardized comment to think that this all happens because of money. The three-legged stool is we got to have enough habitat to have enough ducks, and we have to have enough people engaged to keep the habitat and the ducks out there. That's the
that's the
three-legged
bottom line.
stool. A two-legged stool falls over. So
That's
what
the
has been
bottom line.
recognized by the North American Waterfowl Management Plan is that people matter. And so
That's the
some
bottom
of
line.
this, and I don't think we even have a very good way of including people right now, because if you look at adaptive harvest management, it's about having enough ducks to simply harvest. And all we've said is we'd like to shoot ducks into an infinite time series. Like, as long as we can run, like, hey, we want to be able to shoot ducks in the future. So all we're doing is saying that people want to shoot ducks. We haven't even brought like what people really want in totality into it yet. But we understand that people are a component. So if that's the follow the money, then fine. But I think people have bastardized it and made it into something where they feel like it's about some big money thing with Delta, DU, and some weird bribery thing in the background is running it. And that doesn't exist. If it
It
did,
doesn't
I would have
exist.
seen it by now. In my world, you would have seen it in yours, Ramsey. It doesn't
That's
exist.
right. It does not exist. That's a myth. It's a conspiracy that doesn't exist, and it does more harm than good by creating divisiveness among our ranks. So just
Bingo.
get rid of it.
Bingo. Yeah, and we don't need that. So, hey, let's lighten things up a little bit. What's your outlook for the coming season for the lower miss? Y'all at least have water this year, but what ingredients do we need for a good season for y'all in the
Mike, I'm
South?
optimistic. I'm optimistic. You know, you said the last time you were on my podcast, and understand, if I'm at home, I'm hunting in the state of Mississippi, and as you pointed out, Mississippi is exceptional in the fact that uh, we're exceptional in the fact that just no matter what the bee pop is doing, we're declining. Our hunter
Yeah.
harvest is going down, you know, and this habitat changes. I'm telling you, there's a lot of habitat changes. There's a topic I'm wanting to sniff out and get somebody on there. Have you been in the deep south and run down these waterways yet? And I'm talking from, I don't know how far north it goes, but throughout the state of Mississippi, down the Mississippi River, the Oxbows, all the way down into Henderson Swamp in Louisiana, you got to be careful of carp, these Asiatic carp. And I became aware that, you know, a lot of these big river camps in the state of Mississippi that, you know, got big deer hunting, the good duck hunting. All of a sudden, see some memberships pop up in these historic clubs because you also had a lot of people fishing. And from what I understand, is there's hardly any fishing anymore. These Asiatic carp have gotten into these oxbow lakes, eating all the habitat out, so there's no fishery anymore. Well, if there's no fishery, what else ain't there, Mike? There ain't submerged aquatics for ducks.
Yep.
That could be a big factor going on. And of course, the landscape has changed and everything else. But look, man, I can tell you this: I'm going to go. I'm going to go as much as I can, and I'm gonna love duck hunting in the state of Mississippi for what it is and what it ain't. You know, and it's all I know to do. I've been through some good years. I've been through some bad years, I don't expect to shoot a limit on any given day. I just go because I love it. I love to be with the people I hunt with in the state of Mississippi and with my dogs and my friends, and have a lot of memories, and that's what it's going to be. But I think we're going to be good. I'm excited about my camp because this year a lot of the boards didn't get pulled out on some of the big holes. I have been an advocate. Mike, if I haven't learned to love one thing in 20 years of world travel, it's this: I love emergent marsh. I love natural wetlands.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that picture behind you, all that cypress brake with a lot of lily pads in it. I love that kind of habitat. And if you think about, man, the landscape and habitat conversion we're looking at in North America, man, agriculture itself is 200 something years old. Massive landscape, agricultural landscape is a real new phenomenon of about 150 years old. What did those ducks do between the Arctic and the deep South all millions of years? They lived in natural wetlands. And right now, some of the duck holes that we hunt, nobody could pull all the boards out and plant jack millet. So, man, we have got just some real nice looking emergent wetlands I'm very excited for. And that I think will benefit, especially a lot of ducks. Last year at our camp, and we're not a duck camp, we're a hunting camp. We're a year-round camp, you know what I'm saying? We got deer hunters, duck hunters, whatever. And but last year we took 3 or 4 of our best duck holes and we closed them Monday through Friday. So they're only open on Saturday and Sunday.
Yep.
And we just decided, we'd rather have quality than quantity. And it seemed to be working. And I will say this, it's September 12th today. Man, that humidity evaporated. There hadn't been a hot, muggy morning since about August 20th, for nearly a month. It has been beautiful. So I'm optimistic that maybe we're going to get a winter. Maybe these birds are going to push south. Maybe if it is dry up north, maybe they'll come on south where they got a little habitat. We'll see.
I hope so.
We will see.
I hope so.
I'm a duck hunter, and I think we duck hunters today, I think we've got to be optimist. And so I'm optimistic and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you got to be glass half full, I think, because if you're, I'm usually a 75% full person, because if you're defeatist on the front end, you've already lost. So
ask yourself, Mike, on the worst duck hunt I've been on at home, I go to camp, I shoot one duck, one old hen shoveler. That's all I get that day.
The old hen shoveler.
And I might get skunked. We did have a hunt. I hunted 5 times last year. We shot a limit one morning, got skunked one morning, shot half limits the other 3 mornings. And then none of those mornings, when I got back to camp, could I think of anywhere on earth I'd rather have been than where I was that morning. Not one place on earth I'd rather have been than right there with those people in those duck holes and enjoying that morning for what it is.
Bingo. Yep. It's more than about killing ducks, that's for sure.
Well, let me ask you this: what are your predictions? Or is it too early for a duck migration prediction?
I already did it. I think it's a repeat of last year at this point. I'm wishing for a little bit. I mean, there was a little cool weather that moved birds into mid-latitudes last year, and the cold front that came was short. People complained about it not moving ducks into the deeper south, but Arkansas shot 530,000 mallards last year, supposedly. And then we talked with Ethan Dittmer, who has GPS marked mallards in southeast Kansas. And when the weather severity index said those mallards should move, they did. They went into the Arkansas River Valley down Oklahoma and towards Fort Smith, and that way they moved. They moved into Arkansas. A couple of them went into Mississippi. One of them went into Louisiana. And so I think that cold snap that hit last year was timely. I think despite that people are like, oh, look at all these birds on, somebody puts one video up of one pile of mallards on the Missouri River or somewhere, and then everybody freaks out like there's no ducks in the South. And meanwhile, the people that got them are just crushing ducks, right? So people shot ducks last year. I don't think last year was as dismal as people say. Always remember this. The people that are shooting ducks aren't talking about it because loose lips sink ships. And everybody that's smart knows that. So the only thing you hear on the internet is the negative stuff, and then you'll see pictures at the end of the season. So when it looks good and we tell you to go, damn it, just go. That's right. I think we've got a repeat of last year. Heck, we had a phenomenal ice fishing season up here, and the year before was dismal. The year before was very bad. It was 22, 23? Yeah. No, 23, 24. Because last year was 24, 25. So 23, 24 was bad. In New York, this far north, I was able to walk on safe ice and ice fish one time, other than going to the Adirondack Mountains, where I had to drive 3 hours to find safe ice. That is unheard of in this part of the country. By the third week of January, I was walking on ice, no problem, and able to fish all the way through mid-April. So I had a good season, and that just goes to show there was better ice than before. Still not what it should be, but anyhow. Ramsey, I'm going to throw this back at you because I've been a guest on Duck Season Somewhere a bunch, and, you know, you've always asked me about the weather, which you just did. Give me your synopsis of, like, in your lifetime, do you think stuff's changed weather-wise? Do you think birds are reacting differently, or do you think the weather's changed? What do you think? Of
course they're changing. I mean, ducks are changing. They're staying further north later. I don't think it's a corn conspiracy. I really, truly, I think it's got to do with a changing landscape.
Yep.
You know, first the Canada geese, then the mallards, to an extent the pintails, have figured out that we can sit on unfrozen water, especially in these warmer years, and we can make a living in harvested agriculture further north than we did, 500 to 600 miles north, which puts them around St. Louis up to southern Illinois or parts of Illinois. We can stay further north than we did historically. You know, they did some pretty land break research. I know Heath Hagee was a part of it. They went back and examined 60 years of banding data and proved, it's just what the hunters are saying, that we're not getting the mallard migration that we used to. And I think that's because of a changing landscape that accommodates them better than it did back in the 60s and 70s. But, you know, the flip side of that is, to create all that agriculture, they have done away with, let's say, emergent marsh or what are the wetland obligate dependent, however you say that word.
Yeah, like shovelers, gadwall, widgeon.
Gadwalls, the widgeons. What are they doing, Mike? They have no choice. The blue wings, the scaup, the campusback. What are they doing? They're coming further south earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that goes back to my little strategy in the Deep South. If I'm in the Deep South, knowing that the banding data is supporting the premise that the birds are staying further north, the mallards I'm after staying further north, well, why don't I change my habitat strategy and start having more emergent marsh and some of this habitat for these vegetation eaters like gadwalls and ringnecks and stuff. Maybe I need to shift and accommodate them more than I would otherwise. That's just my thoughts on it, Mike. But yeah, I think there's no doubt they are. You know, it was just 2 years ago. It was so warm that season. You're talking about it was so bad. I remember calling an outfitter up in Alberta, Ranchland Outfitters, and he answered the phone, Rob Reynolds, and he's huffing and puffing like he's walking under a load. And I go, man, what are you doing? You working on a farm shoveling snow? He goes, no, I'm hauling snow. It was December 18th, and the man was leaving the field with a limit of snow geese in Alberta on the last day of the season. So, yeah, the birds are staying. But why would they migrate north if they don't have to, Mike?
We wintered 10,000 pintails locally in New York. It's unheard of. Absolutely unheard of, you know. So, yeah, but those I call them wimpy ducks. You know, they're coming south. Folks want to call them calendar ducks, but it's just because the weather happens before the season occurs and they get into the south, so they're there on opening day. And then, you know, folks are like, well, I shoot mallards every single year on my club on opening day, so they're calendar migrants just like everything else. And I'm like, BS, because just because you got a handful doesn't mean they're not spread out everywhere. And, you know, when people asked me 2 years ago when it was really bad, they're like, where are the mallards? And I came on your podcast. I'm like, they're everywhere. There's no snow. It's mild. They can be wherever they want as long as there's open water and food. One of the things that people don't recognize is that in the heyday of shooting mallards in Arkansas, there was a lot of messy fields. They were harvesting soybeans really late. Rice was starting to come on as a big thing, and that was messy too. And at the same time, Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa had not gotten any good wetland conservation actions in place. And I'm not saying flooded corn. I mean, they had lost 90 to 95% of their wetlands to conversion to agriculture. And we as a country said that's a bad thing for water quality, for people, for flood control, for wildlife, everything. We started putting wetlands back on that landscape. And at the same time, the harvester efficiency and all the agriculture in Arkansas changed. They got better at it. So they lost their food and habitat increased at the north and weather got milder. And that was just a perfect storm for things to change. But as you said, those obligate ducks, I mean, heck, if I could put a strap of 6 widgeon up every single day.
Or gadwalls.
I would,
for that matter.
I'd rather eat a widgeon. They're just a tasty little thing. But I'm a duck eater. But yeah, I'll take them all. But I mean, if I could shoot 6 widgeon each day, I'd be a happy man.
You know, I've shot a lot of ringnecks and I always hated cleaning them because I breast them. It's like dog. It's like skinning a deer. And I was down in South Louisiana last year hunting on a historic old camp. We shot a bunch of ringnecks, and I made that comment. I love shooting them.
Mm-hmm,
and I said I made a comment about cleaning that deer, and the old boy, he looked at me, an old duck guy from South Louisiana. He says, "Boy, you're doing it wrong." I said, "Sir," he says, "these are the fattest ducks in the marsh. They don't have no pin feathers. You've got to hole pluck them. You're crazy if you don't hole pluck a ringneck." So when we divvied up the ducks, he said, "Which 6 you want?" I said, "I want them ringnecks." And we went back to camp and hole plucked them. And Mike, it ought to be against the law to breast a ringneck duck. They had the purest and whitest and most fat. They made the best gumbo I have ever made in my life. And now I am a diehard ringneck guy. Now that I know, don't ever breast a ringneck duck. Them son of a guns have got fat. Just the inside of their body cavity got fat like I've never seen on any other duck. But anyway.
It's a weird one because so at Long Point on Lake Erie, when you shoot them, they're on wild rice, and they are the bread and butter duck. And when they're in and they're on rice, they taste great. When they got down like to the Boot Hill, Missouri, when I shot them there, and they're feeding in, snails and stuff like that, they taste bad for a bit. And I'm guessing they're eating something down in Louisiana.
I don't know what they're eating down in that marsh, but they were fine. Man, it was as good a duck as I've ever had. And I will be targeting a whole lot more of them from now on.
Well, that's a lesson, try one like that. If it tastes like dirt, figure out a way to bacon wrap it. If it doesn't, cook it a different, a more raw way. So good stuff.
But anyway.
At Talus, we know cybersecurity can be tough and you can't protect everything, but with Talus, you can secure what matters most. With Talus industry-leading platforms, you can protect critical applications, data, and identities anywhere and at scale with the highest ROI. That's why the most trusted brands and largest banks, retailers, and healthcare companies in the world rely on Talus to protect what matters most: applications, data, and identities. That's Talus, T-H-A-L-E-S. Learn more at talusgroup.com/cyber.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Hey, we've been jawing a bit. What's next for Ramsey Russell? That's a big question.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Mike. You'd be the first to know, but I'll tell you, I can't give you the short answer. And all good things come to an end. And I'm gonna tell you a story. The first trip, way before Get Ducks, way before I had a government job, I was still working Mississippi State University and dating now she's my wife. 31 years. She's my girlfriend then. It's back for grad school. I took a trip down to South Texas because I always wanted to shoot snow geese. Went down to the Katy Prairie and shot snow geese. The limit was 5. And it's so crazy that in my lifetime, Then came the conservation order, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later. A year or two ago, Texas closed it. And for all practical purposes, because of habitat loss, like we've been talking about repeatedly throughout your podcast, Gulf coastal Texas snow goose hunting is now a chapter in a history book on the shelf. It's gone and it's gone forever. And I'm glad I got to do it. And I just wanted to start off and talk about that because it's I recorded a guy the other day. We did a 3-part series on it because he started guiding when he was 19, retired in the 70s. And he saw the whole rise and fall of that. That's coming up in a few weeks on Duck Season Somewhere podcast. And so much is going on we can control, we can't control. Me personally, I think that for the upcoming season, because of just my kids getting married, boy, couldn't have picked a worse time to suit my schedule. And so I'm going to be around. I've got a trip to Scotland later in October. And so I just don't see myself putting the miles on the old black truck that I'd have in years past doing a big North American road tour. We're going to Scotland. I just got approved. Our passports got approved to apply for visas in Russia. I hope to be in southern Russia. It's a dream trip. It's a trip I have dreamed of doing for 30 years on the Volga River Delta, 10 million acre wetland on the north end of the Caspian Sea. I hope to go back to the UK in February. And this time, actually, we've got the date scheduled for the tides. Then I'll pick up Mexico. We'll go to Azerbaijan. I'll jump down to Argentina next summer. But honestly, we started off, you asked me about this and how I found my voice in my business of getducks.com. But, for 2 years, my wife and I have been talking about scaling back. Man, it was fun. Almost a quarter century we did this. And it was awesome. And obviously, I'm not going to stop duck hunting. Obviously, I'm not going to stop traveling. But really and truly, somebody asked me the other day, well, why hadn't you? And I'm like, man, for all these years, it's been these 2 little motors pulling all these box cars. And, for as far back as I can look, it's an endless amount of box cars. And we're racing down the tracks. You can't just you can't put the brakes on it. But I believe this year, between now and 26 will be the year that we start putting the brakes on it. And it's kind of the end of an era, and I'm ready to focus. My kid's getting married, and I was texting him not too long ago. I mean, all that we did and all that I saw and all that I've accomplished and everything else, it was wonderful. It was a blessed experience that I could not have done on my own. I do believe there was some divinity involved. I do give God credit for a lot of that, but at the same time, it wasn't without trade-offs, and so my kid's getting married. We love his fiance. Couldn't be prouder. And I texted him, just kind of ribbing him and said, hey man, you need to hurry up and get me a grandkid. Because I might not be around forever. I don't be taking any time. I want to have a little boy I can take fishing. To which he wrote back, you got to be home for that. Mike, last year I probably spent 65 or 70 nights in my bed. And and as much as home is where your hat hangs, I kind of like being home. So I really kind of see what's next for Ramsey Russell. We're not going to stop traveling. We're not going to stop Duck Season Somewhere podcast. We're not going to stop a lot of our activities, but in terms of how we started and getducks.com, what the heartbeat of getducks.com is, it's probably fixing to pivot. And I know that we're flipping the switches off a lot of satellite, just out in the far reach type hunts. And I think our game plan, my initial game plan for slowing down that big old train and all that momentum is, I think plan number 1 is we're going to take the telephone number and email addresses off our website. If you know, I got 5,800 telephone numbers and Lord knows 20,000 emails in our database. And those are clients, and if they want to book a trip, they better get in touch with us. But I think we're just going to start scaling back a little bit. Hopefully in a couple of years, who knows? We may just be a real cottage, little mom and pop industry, just like it all started. Which I think it's time for that. Man, I'm not getting any younger. I've got a growing family now, I hope, and kind of looking forward to it, to be honest with you. So that's what my world hope. But now, don't get me wrong. You don't expect to see me sitting at home. I don't expect to be at home all the time, but I expect to be home more than 65 days a year. It was a good run, but it was the end of an era. All good things come to an end.
That is fair, and you deserve a rest. Sit on the porch, watch the sun rise, watch the sun set once in a while instead of constantly chasing it.
That's it. But Mike, thank you so much for having me on, dude. I really appreciate being on this podcast, and I'm already looking forward to having you back on mine.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ramsey. So glad to know you, buddy. Really, truly thankful for just all your great stories you bring to us each week on your podcast, and really thankful for you and everything you do for, duck hunting and duck hunting culture. So thank you, Ramsey. Really appreciate you. My friends across duck country, it is truly duck season somewhere. So may your skies be filled and shoot straight, my friends.